My partner tried to have me killed. The hitman worked for the FBI. The Manhattan skyline at dusk was a jagged masterpiece of ambition, a view I'd paid for with a decade of my life. From the 48th floor of the Orion Tower, the city wasn't just a place, it was a circuit board, and my company, Thorn Alden Capital, was a crucial, humming node upon it. I, Julian Thorn, had built it from a two-man operation in a WeWork closet to a mid-market private equity firm with a portfolio worth just shy of $1 billion. The Alden in the name was Sebastian Alden, my partner, my college roommate, and for 15 years, the brother I'd chosen. Our partnership was the industry's golden alloy. I was the architect, quiet, analytical, able to see the underlying stress fractures in a company's books from a mile away. Sebastian was the frontman, charismatic, ebullient, a maestro of persuasion who could charm a room of skeptical bankers and convince a family-owned business to trust us with their century-old legacy. We were yin and yang. He brought in the deals with his smile and stories, I structured them with spreadsheets and sleepless nights. The trouble began not with a bang, but with a bond, a municipal bond, to be precise. The Lakewood City Revitalization Project. Sebastian had fallen in love with it. It was a sprawling, politically charged mess, a sports complex, luxury condos, and a new transit hub for a struggling Rust Belt city. The projections were rosy, fueled by government grants and optimistic demographic studies. My analysis screamed caution, over-leveraged, dependent on political will, a classic example of hope as a business strategy. Its legacy, Jules. Sebastian had argued, pacing our shared corner office, his Italian loafers silent on the thick wool rug. We don't just make money here, we build monuments. This is our Frick collection, our Central Park. It's a financial sinkhole disguised as philanthropy, I'd countered, my finger tapping the damning cash flow projection on my tablet. The volatility is off the charts. One election, one scandal, and the whole thing craters. We'd be risking 30% of our fund's capital. Risk is the price of entry for greatness. His charm was giving way to something harder, more petulant. You've gotten timid. You're so busy looking for cracks you've forgotten how to lay the cornerstone. The argument escalated, becoming the subtext of every meeting. For the first time, the partners' vote was split. The other three cautious men who respected my numbers but were seduced by Sebastian's vision were deadlocked. The Lakewood deal stalled, a multi-million-dollar stalemate. The fracture widened. Sebastian started working around me, taking junior analysts to long, boozy lunches, seeding dissent. He began referring to our investment philosophy in meetings as Julian's risk aversion therapy. The easy camaraderie evaporated, replaced by a cold, procedural politeness. Our office, once a shared kingdom, felt partitioned by an invisible, electrified fence. The catalyst was the quarterly board meeting. The Lakewood item was back on the agenda. Sebastian had somehow secured a last-minute, non-binding letter of support from the state's new governor. It was a masterstroke of his particular genius, all perception, no substance, but it glittered. The deadlock among the other partners broke. The vote was 4-1. The Lakewood project was greenlit. I sat in silence as the meeting adjourned. Sebastian clapped me on the shoulder, his grip too tight. For the good of the firm, Julian. You'll see. That night, drowning my fury in a single malt at a quiet bar near the office, I overheard two junior associates at the next booth, their voices low and thrilled with gossip. Alden says Thorn is a boat anchor. That if he weren't so tied to the legacy shares, they'd buy him out. Heard him on the phone yesterday. Said something about needing a permanent solution to the Thorn problem. Probably just venting, but still, the words, permanent solution, landed in my gut like a shard of ice. But I dismissed it. Corporate hyperbole. Sebastian was a drama queen. I went home to my empty, sleek apartment, the city's lights feeling less like achievement and more like a cold surveillance grid. A week later, the second anomaly. I received the routine email from our firm's insurance broker about policy renewals. Scrolling through the attached summary, a line item made me freeze. Key person life insurance. Insured, Julian Thorne. Beneficiary, Thorne Alden Capital Fund 4, LLC. Face value, $20,000,000. My blood ran cold. Key person insurance was standard, but this was new, massive, and I had never been consulted, never signed anything. A $20 million payout to the firm if I died. And with our partnership structure, my death would trigger a clause allowing the firm to buy my shares from my estate at a preset, below market valuation. Sebastian, as managing partner of the fund, would control that payout. He wouldn't just get rid of the boat anchor, he'd get my share of the company for pennies on the dollar, and have a $20 million war chest to pour into his Lakewood monument. Coincidence? Paranoia? The two words from the bar permanent solution now echoed with a horrific, literal finality. This wasn't a corporate divorce. This was a blueprint for murder. I couldn't go to the other partners. Sebastian's charm had them in his pocket. I couldn't go to a private investigator. What would I say? My business partner took out a life insurance policy. It was circumstantial. I needed irrefutable proof. And I needed to survive long enough to get it. Acting on a desperate, half-formed plan, I called in a favor from an old law school friend, Ben, who now worked in the white-collar division of the U.S. Attorney's Office. I met him in a secure conference room, not his office. "You look like hell, Julian." "I think Sebastian is planning to kill me," I said, the words sounding insane even to my own ears. I laid it out. The partnership war, the overheard comment, the $20 million insurance policy I never authorized. Ben's initial skepticism faded as I talked, replaced by a grim, professional focus. The insurance policy is a red flag, but not illegal. The permanent solution comment is hearsay. It's not enough for us. But, he leaned forward. If he's serious, he'll look for a tool. We need to hand him one, and make sure it's wired straight to us. The plan was born in that sterile room. Ben would take it to the FBI's complex financial crimes squad. They had experience with murder for hire stemming from business disputes. If they deemed the threat credible, they could run an undercover operation. The waiting was agony. I moved through my days like a ghost, attending meetings, reviewing deals, all while watching Sebastian. His manner toward me changed again. It became cloyingly, falsely conciliatory. "We've been through too much to let this come between us, Jules," he said one afternoon, pouring me a coffee I didn't drink. "Let's have dinner next week. Talk it out, man to man." The invitation felt like a predator luring prey into the open. 4 days later, Ben called. "It's a go. The FBI thinks it's credible. An undercover agent will make contact. Your job is to be normal. Give him nothing. And for God's sake, don't get in a car alone with him." The trap was set. I was the bait, and the world I'd built had become the hunting ground. The agent's name, for operational purposes, was Mikhail. He was a former Army Ranger with a face that could be forgettable or frightening depending on the light. To Sebastian, he was a discreet security consultant with Eastern European connections, referred through a labyrinthine, FBI-constructed chain of shady intermediaries. The first contact was a burner phone, left in Sebastian's unlocked Porsche at a valet stand the FBI had compromised. A text: "Heard you have a rodent problem. Discreet pest control available. M." Sebastian took the bait. The FBI surveillance, a combination of physical tails and cyber intrusion on his devices, tracked his rising panic and then his grim determination. He researched murder for hire online from a public library computer. He withdrew $50,000 in cash from various accounts, a retainer. The staged meet was at a dimly lit, family-run Ukrainian restaurant in Brighton Beach. Mikhail, wearing a leather jacket and a perpetual scowl, played his part to perfection. He was all business, no flair. He spoke in a low monotone about mechanics, cleanup, and deniability. Sebastian, wired by the FBI with a transmitter hidden in a pen, was nervous but chillingly direct. I listened to the audio feed in a nondescript surveillance van parked 2 blocks away, my heart a cold, hard stone in my chest. The voice was Sebastian's, but the words belonged to a stranger. "The problem is operational," Sebastian said, his voice slightly muffled by the restaurant's folk music. "A partner. He's obstructing the future of our enterprise." "Understood," Mikhail's gruff voice replied. "You want the obstruction removed?" "Permanently." "Yes. It needs to look natural." "An accident. A heart attack. A mugging gone wrong. He jogs in Central Park every morning at 6. Hearing my own routine, my life, discussed as a logistical problem made me physically ill. I gripped the edge of the console, my knuckles white. "Natural is more expensive." "More planning," Mikhail said. "Money is not an object. I have access to capital. There's an insurance policy. Its payout will cover your fee and then some." They discussed price. $200,000 total. Half up front, half upon confirmed completion. They arranged the first payment drop for a week later, at a mid-tier business hotel near JFK. Anonymous, transitory, perfect. The week that followed was a surreal exercise in performance art. I had to face Sebastian in the office, knowing he had priced my death and was waiting for the transaction to clear. He was jovial, clapping me on the back, talking about new beginnings. The monstrous hypocrisy of it was acid eating away at my soul. I smiled back, talked about market trends, all while the wire I wore under my shirt felt like a live nerve against my skin. The day of the drop, the FBI transformed a standard hotel room into a cinematic stage. Cameras were hidden in the smoke detector, the alarm clock, the picture frame. Audio was crystal clear. Mikhail was already in the room. Sebastian arrived exactly on time, carrying a sleek leather briefcase. From the command post in a room down the hall, I watched the high-definition feed. Sebastian looked energized, almost euphoric. This was his deal, his ultimate negotiation. "The funds," Mikhail said, not offering a handshake. Sebastian placed the briefcase on the bed, clicked it open. Neat stacks of $100 bills. 100,000. As agreed. The method. Overdose. Fentanyl. Looks like he got a bad batch of something. Junkies in the park. It happens. Mikhail's delivery was brutally casual. Sebastian nodded, a satisfied, business-like nod. Acceptable. Timeline. Within 72 hours of receive. You'll see it on the news. They shook hands. It was the handshake that sealed my murder. The moment their hands parted, the door to the room exploded inward. 4 FBI agents in tactical vests, weapons drawn. FBI. Down on the ground. Now. The look on Sebastian's face was one I will take to my own grave. It wasn't fear of arrest. It was the utter, world-shattering confusion of a master strategist who has just realized, too late, that the entire board game was a hologram, and his opponent owned the projector. His eyes darted to Mikhail, who was calmly putting on an FBI windbreaker over his leather jacket. You're Special Agent Michael Riker, FBI, Mikhail said, his voice now all flat, professional American. You're under arrest for the solicitation of murder for hire, conspiracy to commit murder, and wire fraud. You have the right to remain silent. They cuffed him, reading him his rights over his sputtered, incoherent protests about entrapment and a misunderstanding. As they led him past the command post door, which was ajar, his eyes met mine. I was standing there, flanked by Ben and the lead case agent. The last veil fell. He saw my face, saw the absence of surprise, saw the cold, final understanding in my eyes. His face contorted from confusion into a raw, primal scream of rage and betrayal. You set me up. You lying bastard. An agent shoved him forward. Keep moving, Alden. He kept screaming, the sounds echoing down the sterile hotel hallway until a door slammed shut, cutting them off. The silence that followed was the most profound sound I had ever heard. The legal aftermath was swift and merciless. Sebastian's high-priced lawyer fought the entrapment angle, but the evidence was overwhelming: the recorded meetings, the cash, the insurance policy, his own digital footprint. He was convicted on all counts. At his sentencing, the judge, a stern woman with decades on the bench, looked at him with undisguised contempt. You traded a 15-year friendship and a man's life for a real estate deal and a marginally larger share of a company. Your calculation was not just evil, it was stupid. She gave him 25 years in a federal penitentiary, with no chance of parole. The civil and corporate fallout was more complex, but my position was unassailable. The other partners, horrified and terrified of liability, immediately voted to invoke the partnership agreement's clause regarding criminal misconduct. Sebastian was forcibly divested. His shares, now toxic and leveraged to pay his monumental legal fees, were acquired by the partnership at a fire sale price. Using the capital from the insurance policy payout, which was legally voided due to the fraud but whose value was part of the estate seizure, I was able to buy them myself. Thorn Alden Capital became Thorn Capital. The Alden was scrubbed from the website, the letterhead, the brass plaque in the lobby. The $20 million from the voided insurance policy presented a moral quandary. It was blood money, a price tag on a life that hadn't been taken. Keeping it felt like a contamination. After lengthy consultation with Ben and a therapist I'd started seeing to deal with the lingering PTSD, I made a decision. I would redirect the funds. I established the Anchor Trust, a foundation dedicated to funding victims' rights organizations, cold case investigations, and legal aid for those trapped in situations of coercive control or violent threat. The first major donation went to the very FBI field office that had saved my life, earmarked for their victim assistance programs. The first year of running the firm alone was grueling. I had to be both architect and frontman, a role that didn't come naturally. But I hired a brilliant, empathetic crew to handle client relations, and I found a new clarity in my work. Without Sebastian's grandiose, legacy-chasing impulses, the firm's strategy became leaner, more ethical, more sustainable. We stopped chasing monuments and started building foundations. Profitability, ironically, increased. One afternoon, 18 months after Sebastian's sentencing, I was working in my office, the partition gone, the space feeling both larger and more solitary. My assistant buzzed. "Mr. Thorne, there's a piece of mail here. Marked personal. It's from the Federal Correctional Institution, Danbury." My stomach tightened. I had never responded to any of Sebastian's letters, which his lawyer had forwarded initially. I told her to shred them unopened. This one had come directly. "Bring it in," I said, my voice calm. It was a single sheet of prison stationery. The handwriting, once a flamboyant scrawl, was now small, tight, controlled. "Julian, I am not writing to ask for forgiveness. I know the geometry of that is impossible. I am writing because in here, in the silence between the routines, you have nothing but the company of your own thoughts. And mine always return to the moment in that hotel hallway, seeing you in the doorway. I thought I was playing a high-stakes game of chess. I thought you were my opponent across the board. I never understood that you had stepped off the board entirely. You weren't playing the game, you were watching it from above, and you saw the rot in the wood I was made from. The Lakewood deal collapsed last week. The governor was indicted for fraud. The bonds are worthless. You were right. About everything. I am trying, here, to become a man who can recognize truth when he sees it. It is a slow, painful forging. The first truth I had to face was this: you didn't destroy me, Julian. You simply held up a mirror to what I was already in the process of becoming. The sentence I am serving is not the one handed down by the judge. It is the one I passed on myself the moment I decided a person was a problem to be solved. I hope the firm is thriving. I hope you are well. Sebastian. I read it twice. Then I walked to the window, the same window we'd once cheered, looking out at the city we'd wanted to conquer. I felt no pity, no schadenfreude, no urge to reply. The letter wasn't for me, not really. It was his own confession, whispered into the void. A final, belated audit of a bankrupt soul. I folded the letter neatly, opened a small, fireproof safe bolted to the floor behind my desk, the one that held the original partnership agreement, the first dollar we'd ever made, and the FBI evidence docket number for United States v. Alden. I placed the letter inside, on top of the docket folder. Then I closed the safe, spun the lock, and returned to my desk. There was work to do. The market was moving. There were companies out there with solid bones but poor leadership, good people trapped in bad situations, value obscured by chaos. It was work that required a clear eye, a steady hand, and an understanding that the most dangerous risks are never in the spreadsheets, but in the human heart. I picked up the phone to call my coup. The city below me gleamed, not as a prize to be won, but as a complex, living system to be navigated with care. The ghost was gone. The foundation, tested in the most horrific way possible, had held. And from it, I was building something new, something that didn't need a partner's name in the title to feel complete. It just needed to be true.